Welcome to the Coop with Kit. My name is Kit Hoover, and I have been lucky enough in my 30 years in this business to interview some of the most iconic, badass women out there. We all know that girlfriends give the best advice, and they're all coming to the Coop. We're talking career, marriage, kids, sex, aging, all of it. I truly believe we are just hitting our stride. All right, my chickens, let's get into it. All right, when you hear the name Cindy, there's only one iconic face that comes to mind. Of course, I'm talking about Cindy effing Crawford. Sorry about the F right there, bud. But today, we are dry brushing off the layers to reveal the past that made Cindy who she is today. By the way, she also does give real beauty tips on dry brushing, and they're amazing. She's an empty nester, like a lot of us. She's in the middle of rediscovering her life with her husband, Randy, and she's figuring out what her back nine looks like. We get into parenting kids in their 20s, aging gratefully, and the benefits of being friends with George Clooney. She's real, she's honest, she's a legend. Here is Cindy Crawford. Welcome to the Coop, Cindy Crawford.
Thank you. Thank you. I like your wallpaper.
Isn't that fun?
So
They're
cute.
actually mermaids coming together. I'm so glad to see you, my friend.
You too.
We always start off in the Coop with one question, Cindy, to describe where you are in your life right now. One word.
One word. Next chapter. That's 2 words, sorry.
And explain.
Well, I have both my kids are moved out of the house, and that's a big change. And so it's kind of like Randy and I figuring out together what this next chapter will be like. And it's fun. It's exciting. It can be a little intimidating as well. And I think also it can be a little sad because you realize, like that period of having kids in the house and all of that is over. And I think I don't want to get stuck in that. So I'm really consciously trying to figure out, okay, what's next? What's fun for us to do as a couple and in my career, my life as well.
Cindy, that's why I'm doing the Coop. I'm living your life. I was like, okay, my kids 2 have already flown. I've got one who's going to be a senior. So there is that feeling. And as far as a relationship, how has it shifted for you and Randy? Like all of a sudden you do have more time for each other. And sometimes it can be a little jarring if you haven't worked on it.
Yeah. And for us, we live in Malibu and we've lived here for almost 20 years. And it was a great place to raise our kids, but we're a little bit isolated, which was great when our kids were little because we always had their friends here and our friends here, but it's not a convenient lifestyle where I live. So I think that once the kids left, and I was explaining to one of my friends, it's like, as much as I love and have loved living here, like the ghosts of the children are everywhere. Every room you walk through, you're like, oh, remember when they used to be playing like Play-Doh on the floor? Oh, remember when they had their little, I called them dog beds, but we had little mattresses in our bedrooms.
Yes.
So when they would sneak in our room in the middle of the night, I didn't get like a hand to the head or a foot to the head. One thing that we did, and it was kind of, for me, it was on the advice of my sister. She said, if you're thinking about moving or doing something, you got to do it right when your kids move out, go to college or whatever, because if you wait too long, they get married and they settle near you, that's where you're going to be stuck in a way.
Yep.
So we have been spending time in Miami the last couple of months just to see, is this something that we would enjoy? And I think what it's done for us is, first of all, Miami lifestyle is very different because it's like a city.
Heck yeah, it is.
But with vacation weather. So I'm liking that. And we're discovering stuff together. It's been great for our relationship because we're kind of a little bit more dependent on each other because we don't have so many friends.
I can feel this coming from me. Sort of what's the next part that takes us to the next chapter? Because you're right, nothing stays the same, right? My dad always says you can't walk the same riverbed twice because it's changing underneath you and it gets scary. Are you and Randy on the same page with it? Like, are you both liking Miami?
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty new and we're still in Malibu. Like I'm back this for now, but even if it doesn't become something permanent, it's good to remember that you have that adventurous side. When I go to Miami, it's not that I forget I have kids. I never forget I have kids, of course, but it's like, oh, we're just Cindy and Randy again. Like, for instance, I don't have to worry about having food in the house there. Like, It's so amazing.
Tell me more about that. Like, what's your life like in Miami? Like, do you guys walk in the morning and go get your coffee and go run on the beach and plan dinner?
Exactly. All of that. Bike ride. Like we would never in a million years do this here, but like I had some errands to do and parking can be a pain. And I said, can you just basically drive me around so I don't have to park? And I'll went to the post office and all those little normal things of life.
Yeah.
And I love it. And the fact that Randy drove me around while I did it was actually, it sounds so mundane and maybe it's not something we'd want to do every day, but it was really fun. And just finding the pleasure in those small things.
I feel like you're back to what it was probably like when you were dating.
Yeah. Yeah.
You said, I love this quote from you, that your goal in life is not to be happy as much as your goal is to be present. And I feel like that's even what you're talking about now in this transition. Have you always had that insight to be like this?
There's a doctor in LA that I love. He's a homeopathic doctor. And every time you would come in, he would say, well, rate yourself on a scale, happiness scale from 1 to 10. And I was like, I don't even know how to answer that question because that's not really like my goal. There are times that it's appropriate to feel sad or to feel nervous. I think as a society, we have gotten so far away. Like if it's part of being human to experience almost every human emotion, right? Like anger and jealousy and heartbreak and all of those things. We can't just all be rainbows and butterflies all the time. And I think that part of our growth and probably more of our growth comes from those more challenging feelings. So I don't want to avoid those feelings. I want to, if anything, I guess, kind of run toward them and feel them and then move on.
Do you think, Cindy, this is because of your childhood? I was so sad to read about you losing your brother at age 3. I think you were 9. How did you handle all that grief?
Obviously, losing a child and as a mother, it's, the worst thing that you could think of. And I remember actually when I had my first child, I called my mother like 2 days later and I was like, how did you survive? Like, you can imagine what losing a child is like before you're a mother, but then once you're a mother,
Nope.
It's actually unimaginable. And so it is devastating for a family. And it is like a family diagnosis when a kid gets cancer, but
Ugh.
then losing a child. I was very blessed because my mother had like very strong faith and she was able to let herself grieve. She went to death and dying courses. She was very involved in the church. So she was able to kind of usher us through that in a way that we were able to get through what I remember. And who knows if this is what she said, but it was this idea that, hey, whatever Jeff, that was my brother's name, whatever Jeff came to this earth to do, he did it already. He did it. And now he's in heaven.
Ugh.
And you'll do your thing and then you'll go to heaven. So it was like a loss for us, but it wasn't presented in this like, just terribly tragic way. And I think that really helped us go on with our own lives. And of course, there were times that was sad and we saw our mom cry. I think it was much harder for my father because he had to go to work 3 days later.
Gosh.
You know?
Can you imagine?
No,
Ugh.
no. And I think also, even for me, I remember going to school and no one knew what to say to me. They knew my brother died, but no one knew what to say because I think when it's hard for people, like when my husband's father died, so many people are like, oh, I lost my father too. And that is helpful, but you don't know what it's like for my husband, because maybe, and what I always say is I can't imagine what you're going through because I can't. And it's like, I'm here if you want to talk. It's that simple. Acknowledging loss is kind of a lost art.
Yeah.
And then just giving the person opportunity to say thank you and move on, or thank you and yes, I want to talk about it.
Yep. And grief doesn't leave you. It just changes. I feel like the generation that we're in with a lot of us losing parents and everything, that it feels very relevant. I love you talking about your mom. She sounds incredible. Have you always been close with her?
Yes, 100%. And, I'm very blessed because she was young. She was 16 when she got pregnant.
Wow.
Yes. And then married. I always say I say married and pregnant at 16, not necessarily in that order.
At 16. Whoa.
Yes. And she had my sister at 17, me at 19. And then other sister at 22 and then my brother at 23. And then she'd lost a child by the time she was 26.
Oh,
Considering how young she was, she really had, I think, just a very good natural instinct and was a great example of what unconditional love from a mother looks like. It was also good because I had the balance of my dad who rewarded like accomplishment, achievement a little bit more. So that maybe I got more of my drive from him. And it was nice to have that balance. But I've always had an amazing relationship with my mom. And she's my friend now, but she was my mom.
oh yeah.
She's like, you're going to have other friends. I'm your mom. And I think our generation of parenting, we kind of wanted to be like the cool parents maybe, or our friends. But I would always be reminded of my own mother that she wasn't the cool mom and she wasn't trying to be my friend, but we are friends now.
I feel like I have the exact same relationship with my mom, Bug. And everybody says, how do you get it? And I'm like, oh, no, she was not my friend growing up. Now she's my best friend. There's no one I love, respect more. She's my moral compass. She's my pace car. How often do you talk to your mom?
Oh, I talk to her at least once a week.
I was thinking about how young she was when she got pregnant. And I was thinking about you in high school. And you talked about getting bullied in high school.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? What did these nasty girls do?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because probably getting bullied in high school is a rite of passage. And it wasn't like a physical bullying, but there was mean girls. I mean, that's a real thing, right? And I'm sure you've experienced it as well. And I saw my daughter experience it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, when I was 15 and I got a call from like one of the clothing stores in my little hometown, and they said they wanted me to come in to meet them about modeling for them. And so I like put my hot curlers in and, put my whatever makeup, my Mary Kay makeup that my mom had
Yes.
Put on. And I went into the store and I asked, oh, I'm here for the modeling interview or whatever. And they said, what? We don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, you called me and said you wanted to model for them. And they're like, no, I wasn't. We don't know what you're talking about. And I walked out of the store totally humiliated. And I saw these two mean girls from my high school on the corner, just like laughing their butts off. And it was devastating. But I will tell you, it was pretty fun going back to my 10th year high school reunion and seeing them. It's like, maybe they planted that seed, who knows?
How do you like them apples?
Yeah.
When it was happening, Cindy, what did you do with those emotions? Did you tell your mom about it or your sisters?
Oh, absolutely. They were just like, yeah, there's mean girls in the world,
You were valedictorian of your high school class. Were you complimented more for your smarts or your looks?
I think we were complimented more on our efforts and things we did. The way you look was just not a big thing in my house. Like my mother, she wore like eczema, like she just was not a makeup person or a hair person. So I didn't grow up with a lot of vanity. Of course, like, around puberty and you start looking at Teen Vogue or something and you would look and try to get your Calvin Klein jeans or your Gloria Vanderbilts or whatever. You wanted to more
I wanted the Gloria Vanderbilt so bad.
Oh, I had my Gloria Vanderbilt.
Oh my God. Remember the velvet ones?
Yes.
Wait, not necessarily your family. I love that. My family, by the way, was the same.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm some beauty, but nothing was ever focused on looks.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. I remember when I won silly homecoming queen, and I'm only sharing that story because I left to go run the track meet and it was never mentioned again. It just wasn't, you were celebrated for your hard work, your grit, your toughness, your kindness. But did the outside world compliment you more on your looks or your smarts?
Even modeling it's partly about the way you look. And there's a skill to it as well. But there is a thing as being photogenic, right? Like you can see a beautiful person and like their beauty doesn't come through a picture. Or you can see like sometimes some models will walk in and literally you won't think other than that they're usually 5'10". And then all of a sudden there's like this incredible transformation and they're photogenic. So I guess, once I started modeling, even then it was like, oh, I had this weird mole and I didn't look like the blonde Cheryl Tiegs, like Christy Brinkley type that was the generation before me.
Okay, so now college is in your sights. You got a full scholarship, incredible, to Northwestern in chemical engineering. Tell me about the first semester and walking into that chemistry class.
One of my professors the first day, because I was pretty much the only girl he's like, I think you're in the wrong class, honey. And then I
Oh,
was like, oh, I'm going to prove this guy wrong, you know? And that was the first time that I felt judged by my looks in a negative way, that people were making assumptions about me based on my looks. And I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting, you know, but I took it as a challenge as well.
well, in the 90s supermodel doc, you talked about this because then you got into modeling pretty much at still a young age
Hmm.
after that, after you left college and you went abroad and you're doing all these shoots. You said there was a time when all of a sudden you thought, wait a minute, I'm not ready for this. What happened that you were like, you know what? I got to take a beat on all this.
So I had started modeling in high school, but in Chicago, and I was doing like catalog. And then I would drive home at night and do my homework and go to homecoming on the weekend and things like that. So it was just like my after school job. It wasn't this whole lifestyle. And then I got my scholarship to Northwestern, but I had that summer in between when I started. And my agency wanted me to go to New York. And when I went to New York, they wanted me to go to Europe. And just a couple things happened in Europe. One was they had asked me to cut my hair for a job. I had said no. And they said, well, come anyway. And then the hairdresser took my hair in a ponytail and snipped it off.
I saw that in the doc. I was freaking out.
I literally, that's why I probably have never had short hair since then, because the one time I did it, I didn't vote myself in, right? So
Yeah.
I was traumatized by it. And then I remember being at a dinner with some Italian photographers and some models that were older than me. And one girl was up on the table dancing. And I knew that I was not ready to play in that game yet. And then, and then I went on another photo shoot, and we were shooting actually this beautiful spa in Bermuda, but they wanted me in the steam shower. Okay. And at one point I was like, can you let me out? Like, they were shooting through the door and the photographer wouldn't let me out. And I ended up passing out in the steam. And I thought, this is crazy. Like,
How old are you at this time?
I was 18, like just out of high
Oh my
school. And
gosh.
that's when I called my mother and I'm like, get me back my scholarship. I need to come back. And she did. She got me reinstated, and I went to Northwestern, but was still modeling in Chicago. And then when I was 20, I had, 2 more years of adulting and building up my confidence and finding my voice, that when I moved to New York at 20, honestly, like, I don't have any of those kind of situations that happened after that, because
Yeah.
I learned that I could say no, and it wasn't worth anything to let that happen to me.
Did you have great friends from high school or your childhood that you still keep up with, or when all that was going on in your life, were they part of this journey with you?
I still do have friends from high school that when I go back to Chicago, they'll come in and we all got together at someone's like little lake
Oh,
cottage.
fun.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny. We did a trip to Cabo once. I had two girls trip back to back, one with my Chicago friends, and then they left and my LA mommy group came. And my Chicago friends had been there before I got there. And I got down there and they're all like sunburned, drinking beer, playing beer pong, whatever. And they go, and the LA girls come and everyone's got sunscreen and wearing hats and sipping rosé. And I just thought, I love both worlds,
Yeah.
and I feel comfortable in both now. But I think when you start, and I know you know this, like, you come from this little humble beginnings and then you're catapulted into this other world. It takes a while to figure out how to integrate them. And I think that, like, probably at that time, I don't know if my friends would have really understood, because it was like, what are you complaining about? You're in Bermuda, or you took the Concorde, or, something like that. And it does sound like a very privileged problem. So, of course, they had like a good moral compass, but they wouldn't know how to help me navigate that.
Yeah. Your world was so different. It was such a different time.
Yes.
Jump to New York, the modeling career takes off.
Mm-hmm.
You and I were on MTV around the same time. You were a little bit ahead of me. Cindy, House of Style was the greatest show of all time. There had never been anything like that on the air, mixing fashion and music and celebrity. What do you remember about that show?
First of all, MTV, I mean, I'm sure you remember where you were the first time you saw MTV,
Oh,
right? Unless you're kind of our generation, you don't understand what a big impact MTV had on our generation. And then I remember getting the call from the producer, Elisa Bellatini, And my modeling agency was like, why would you do that? Like they pay nothing. And I just thought, I don't know. I felt like this could be interesting because I can talk. It's going to help me develop a different skill set. And so I did it. And like the first show was so bad, but it wasn't.
What happened on the first show?
They had no teleprompter for me. And I had never really done like any. Did you go to broadcasting school or anything like that?
I studied communications in college, but similar to you, you're just thrown in and expected to go, which I think is the best way to learn. But yes, no, there was no formal training.
Right. So I just sound very monotone. And I also, as we went on with House of Style, I started writing my own scripts. So they sounded like me and they were easier to memorize. But in the beginning, I just said what they told me to say. It was really bad. But you see me getting better over 7 years and me feeling more comfortable and me finding my voice and myself in front of the camera. The thing about traditional modeling in magazines is you're just like a two-dimensional image. But MTV gave me an opportunity to be myself and show my sense of humor. It was just fun. And then I got to meet so many incredible, iconic people like, Lenny Kravitz and, well, I knew the guys from Duran Duran, but, Sheryl Crow and Tracy Ullman and Will Smith. I mean, so many people when they were babies too, like we all grew up together.
There was something so magical about the time. I was watching, Cindy, an old interview from House of Style, you with Mark Wahlberg, and he's literally wearing Gap pants.
Yes,
and
big.
a Michigan sweatshirt. And he was like, the M is for me. And then you had the guy from the Red Hot Chili Peppers with his rings. And you were so present, to go back to your word, in the moment. What was the most challenging part for you doing that show?
I love music, but I'm not like a music librarian. So I'm kind of like, I'm a Midwestern girl. I'm kind of naive. So I remember like with Chris Robinson from the Black Crowes, he had these plants on his pants that were cannabis, but I did not know what cannabis was. It took me a minute. I was like, what are you wearing? What's on your pants? And he's like, cannabis or something like that. And I'm like, wait, oh, okay. Like now I know what that is. We were doing some big thing over in London. And anyway, they're like, Led Zeppelin's coming over. And I'm like, which one is he? Because I did not know that Led Zeppelin, I mean, it could have been a person. So it was just
good old Led.
Yeah, exactly. But the great thing was that my producer she was passionate about music and fashion. And so we just decided to use my kind of innocence as part of, because it was real. It was who I was, and not try to make me like, oh, so the undertones of your music are, no, that's not who I would be.
Authenticity is king in our business.
Yes.
Have you always had the ability to laugh at yourself?
Oh, if you ask my husband, he would say no.
Why would he say that? That's so you.
Well, I think we have a different sense of humor sometimes. One of the things that I would say I don't like, and I see this happen a lot in families, is like the mom sometimes becomes like the butt of the joke, right? Like
I know that well.
And already you're like dragging the diaper bag, or you're like cleaning up for everyone. They're all playing after dinner and you're doing dishes or whatever. And then they're making fun of you. And I'm like, no, this is not fun. And I know he would be trying to get the kids going, but sometimes I would feel like it was at my expense. And I'm like, but if I'm not laughing, it's not funny. Like the way I communicate, it's like we all have these bruises that you might not know. So you might accidentally hit one and you're like, I barely touched you. And I'm like, but I have a bruise there already. I'm sensitive there. So especially like in, family relationships and close relationships, even though I've been married, 25 years, he doesn't know where all my bruises are yet. And so sometimes I'll be sensitive about something that he's like, why did that upset you? Then I'll be able to equate it back to something that, from a million years ago, or just like an insecurity or whatever.
I love learning that there's always going to be new bruises and old bruises and how to communicate it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you guys have one of the healthiest marriages. You seem very connected with the kids, with each other. Tell me about meeting Randy. Was it love at first sight?
Well, it was definitely interest at first sight, but it was also great because we didn't meet on a date. We met through a friend, and I was dating someone and he was dating someone. So we just met like with zero pressure. And we ended up going to this wedding together because like I was invited alone and he was invited alone. So it was through my agent, and my agent was like, you don't probably want to walk in by yourself. So you can go with one of these 3 guys. I knew 2 of them. I'm like, I'm not going with those 2. So I picked door number 3, but I wanted to meet him first the night before. And Randy had just opened his first bar in New York, and I went and we met. But again, like it wasn't like my date game.
Yeah.
And he wasn't on his date game. And then we went to the wedding together, and he was late and I was annoyed. So like instantly we were ourselves. And again, I think authenticity is probably our theme for today. We were both our authentic self from the very beginning, like because we weren't putting on like our best selves, because we weren't really trying to impress each other.
That's gold right there.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself helping your kids as they date and navigate that you've learned, especially with Randy?
It's so funny because I think probably the best advice I ever got from my mother is don't give advice unless asked for.
I need to learn that one.
It's also the hardest
I'm a
advice.
work in progress.
Yes, me too, by the way. So is my mom, by the way. But my mother's other great line is show up, shut up, and wear beige. She's like, you just got to like show up, shut up, and wear beige. And I remind myself that sometimes, like, especially when it comes to the kids, because the more that I step back and just be available and really try not to give my opinion, or I'll say, are you asking for my opinion? Then, because like with my kids, I want them to know if they ask, they're going to get my honest opinion. If you don't want my honest opinion, don't ask. So then they'll ask and I'll be, well, do you want my honest opinion? Then they know it's not good, right? I really try not to overly insert myself, because I know for myself, like I've learned the most or grown the most when I've made mistakes or, figured things out on my own.
You always learn from all of your past life stuff. And you talked about with your marriage to Richard Gere that you really learned so much that helped you in your relationship, this long marriage relationship with Randy. What did you learn from that? And now a word from our sponsors. So some of you know that I've recently taken up golf and I can't get enough of it. And I'm equally obsessed with this ladies' golf clothing brand that I found. It's called Lola, Lohla Sport, Lola Sport. And I love that it's a female-owned brand, super fashionable pieces that can coordinate to make many outfits, on-trend colors, fine European fabrics, and a great fit. In fact, I find that I'm wearing Lola Sport outfits even when I'm not on the golf course. I could wear it all day long. If you're a sporty lady like me and really don't want to change clothes 5 times a day, you'll love Lola Sport. And for our listeners, you can get 20% off full price merchandise with code COOP20 at checkout at lolasport.com. Bubs Naturals is known for more than just collagen. Every morning I start my day with their new Bubs Brew coffee and add their amazing MCT creamer. Now, Bubs Brew is a curated collection of amazing organic coffee that is very strong and tastes delicious. Now, I love strong coffee, and Bubs Brew delivers. For extra added mental focus, I add their MCT creamer. It's the first Whole30 approved MCT creamer with no sugar or artificial flavoring. When I use it, I swear I feel the extra energy and mental stamina to be sharp for 2 live shows, my workout in the morning, and of course, then interviews for the Coop with Kit. Thank you, Bubs, for keeping me sharp. Go to bubsnaturals.com and use Coop20 for discounts on all the amazing Bubs products and living better longer. Hey everyone, I'm a jeans girl, and if you're like me, you need to know about Blue Delta jeans. Blue Deltas are custom fit for your body type. You send in your measurements and they custom fit them to you. I've truly never had jeans that fit me this perfectly, and honestly, it's been a game changer. Their easy measurement process to get your custom fit and their unique hand-sewn jeans are the best you can get. You will not believe how great they feel. And with white jeans season upon us, Blue Delta jeans should be your go-to. I'm completely obsessed with their incredible custom white vintage jeans that come in straight and flare styles. Trust me, you will live in them. Go to bluedeltajeans.com and enter the code COOP20 for 20% off your new perfect jeans. And now, back to the Coop. this long marriage relationship with Randy. What did you learn from that? First of all, how old were you? I was trying to remember back when you got married, Cindy.
I think I met Richard when I was 22, but we got married when I was 25. And we were only married like a year and a half. I learned from Richard how to be famous, really. And I'm grateful for that because I watch other people go through it. And if you don't have like a good guide, it can be very daunting. And I know you see that.
Yeah.
Because especially when it happens overnight for people, it's like, what is this? And Richard, I think, had a very good way of seeing people, but also not letting it control his life. We aren't exactly the same about it, but even deciding, how do I want to handle fame? Like, it's a decision you get to make as opposed to just letting it be thrust upon you. But I would say that's the biggest lesson I learned from Richard.
Did you always know you wanted to get married a second time? Did you know the proposal was coming?
I always knew I wanted like a traditional marriage and kids. I always knew I wanted kids, and it maybe sounds really old fashioned, but that seemed part of having a family that I would want. I didn't know the proposal was coming when it came. We discussed it, but it was still a surprise on the day.
Do you guys have nicknames for one another?
No, actually. It's funny. He used to call me princess, but now that's Kaya. Kaya's the princess. But I'm like, well, I guess I'm the queen, but that's not a cute nickname.
You're the queen then. You're taking it over.
Yeah. And, Randy's name is actually Rand, Rande, but his name is Rand, but no one calls him that. So, sometimes I call him Rand, but more like, it's, like when your mom calls you by your full name when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I was Cynthia Ann, get over here. So it would be more like Rand, but babe. I think it's just like babe. Simple. Yeah.
Babe's always a good one. How would your kids describe the two of you as a couple, like mom and dad?
I think, well, it's fun. We just went with Kaya and her boyfriend last night to one of the after parties for the Oscars. And so I know for sure she thinks we're fun. And it really is great when your kids get to that age. You go from like parent to like coach to whatever that next thing is. And you can just go out and enjoy them as like their own people. And you're not like so responsible. I mean, they're a reflection of you, but also they're their own thing. I'm trying to think what Presley would say. I know Presley really looks up to Randy. Like he really wants to emulate Randy. I don't know what Presley would say about me. That's funny. I've never really thought about that. Why? What do your kids say about you?
You know what? Probably a whole bunch of the same, like strict, but fun. Mm-hmm. But I hope they would say that I'm present and there for them, no matter what's going on.
Yeah.
That they're the priority.
Yeah.
I think they always feel like the priority, even though I've got a lot going on, just like you do.
Yes. Yeah.
I would say balance is a 4-letter word. Do you feel like that? Like sometimes there's a homemade dinner and sometimes it's Postmate and every man for themselves.
Yeah. I always say that thing that women are supposed to, you can have it all. And I think that's true. It's just hard to have it all at the same time.
Yes.
And something's got to give, right? And so sometimes your cookies at the bake sale were store-bought, or I remember one time I showed up on one of those days where I was trying to do it all, and I was shooting a hair commercial. And so the hairdresser had come to my house at like 5 a.m. and put extensions in and put rollers in because I had to go watch Kaya in her little school Christmas show or whatever. And I showed up with like gigantic rollers in my hair with like a scarf over it because it was raining. And I thought, I am like such a good mom, right? Because I got up at 5 early.
Yeah.
She was mortified. She was like, how could you show up at my school like that? And I realized like that was one of those times where trying to do it all wasn't the best thing. It wasn't good for anybody.
I love watching your kids shine. I've been able to interview Kaya and see her about, I'm so excited about her new book club, Library Science, that she just launched. Are you an avid reader like she is?
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I always tease her because she'll be like, I think I posted a picture of myself reading the other day. She's like, Mom, that's my thing. Funny on Instagram. And I was like, well, where do you think you got it from? I do remember being that age where I was reading more like philosophy. Now I just want like a nice, entertaining escape book,
Yes, relaxing.
Life's hard enough.
And I love what Presley's doing. I saw his great interview he did with Studio 22, all about mental wellness. Mm-hmm. This needs to be taught as young as middle school throughout for everybody. I wish I had that going through it. How are you helping him guide him through this?
I mean, I think obviously our generation sure didn't grow up talking about it,
No one
right?
talked about it.
But I also don't think we had so many of the challenges that this generation faces. I think that's an interesting thing about parenting. And maybe every generation of parent feels this way. But like some of the social media stuff or even texting, like, is it okay to break up by text? I would say no. But I think that's how they do it now, right? Like it's not like, but to me, that seems like bad manners, right? But I think they're like, you would never do that in person. Or sometimes when I text and I use a period, Kaya's like, are you mad at me? And I'm like, why? She's like, well, you put a period at the end of your sentence. I'm like, because it's a sentence. Like I use good grammar and it's just different. We don't know the codes and the vocabulary of their generation. And so sometimes it's hard to parent, but how do we deal with it now? And I think young women are experiencing it, but young men too. So for Presley, even to just talk about his own anxiety and his own struggles with mental health is brave. And I think just showing him that we're not afraid to go there with him, you know, and I think I was raised with like, you don't show your dirty laundry in public. I'm not sure that's correct. I think the more we are vulnerable, I know like with my girlfriends, when I share, oh gosh, I'm having this issue or about parenting or relationship or work or whatever, having other people support me or share as well helps me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the more we do that as a community, the better, because especially social media holds up these completely unrealistic standards of what everyone's life is like.
It's not reality. Well, I just love where both of them are in their life right now, and I'm just watching them blossom.
Yeah.
Have Kaya and Presley always been close?
Yeah. I mean, you know, they're regular siblings, and there's those little moments like when I remember one time when Kaya just is old enough where she's starting to get into stuff, he's like, I hate you. And she's like, I know, Fwez. She called him Fwez.
Fwez.
And yeah, it was so cute. I wish I had that on tape, you know, when they had that little baby voices. But they've always been close. And they're also close in age. But when your kids seek each other out totally on their own outside of you and your husband, that is like, that is just like the best thing. Yeah.
Cindy, I have an older brother. We're Irish twins. He calls me Junior because he's 6'2", I'm 5 feet. And we are like this. And that will be Kaya and Presley. It's such a cool person.
Wait, you have the same parents and he's 6'2"?
He's 6'2", exactly. If I didn't look like my mom, I'd be like, something's in the woodpile.
Exactly. That's funny.
Right? All right, Cindy, would you like to play a little game as we wrap up here?
Okay, sure.
It's called Let's Get Random. Oh, I love this first one. Okay. Have you ever been rejected by a guy?
Rejected by a guy. God, it's been so long that I've been with Randy. I've been with him 30 years.
I'm going to say the answer is no.
I guess no.
By the way, boom, baby.
Okay.
What is in your bedside drawer?
Oh, gosh. Like stuff to put on my heels so they don't get all gross. An eye mask, melatonin. And on top is always my book. Or now I use a Kindle now because I like it because it has the light inside. So I can read without disturbing Randy.
Did you go to your prom?
I did. I did
Ooh.
Go to my prom. And I wore a great Calvin Klein backless sheath dress while everyone else was wearing gunny sacks. I had already started modeling. So I was like, I was bringing my best fashion game.
Oh, who was the guy?
He was my high school boyfriend. That was my boyfriend. He was, of course, the quarterback. And he was my boyfriend for a couple of years afterwards.
I can't stop thinking about what?
I would say at this point, it's like, what's next for me? It's this idea of having purpose. I think, especially, for mothers, like we had this big purpose for the last 20 years. Yeah. And of course, they'll always be my little purposes. But what next is my reason that I'm getting up every morning.
We're twins in that aspect, not the supermodel aspect, but that's how I feel, Cindy. It's so nice to talk to you and know that you're normal because this is what all my friends and I are talking about. It's a weird transition phase and we're so grateful for it and to have our health and our kids, but it's a little scary. It's a little bit of like, okay, let me just take some deep breaths here.
Yeah. And I think that for me, I also realized like, it's also okay to just take the deep breath and have fun too. Like that's part of the next chapter. It's like rediscovering fun for yourself.
My nickname growing up was?
I did not have a nickname. I called myself, because I told my family I was adopted. I just was like, there's no way I could be from DeKalb, Illinois. This is not my life. And so I called myself Cinderdo Crawferdo.
That's the best.
Yes.
I'm going to send you a sweatshirt with that on it.
Okay.
My current screensaver is?
A picture of Randy walking on the beach.
That's part again of the being present where you are. Fill in the blank here. Aging is?
Wow. The first word that came up is scary, but the second word that came up is a privilege because, and I'm sure you have friends too. Like I have a friend who's just going through some health stuff right now. And it actually, she got diagnosed right around my birthday. And I was like, any feelings I had negative about getting older, it was like,
yep.
Let that go. And just, It's a gift. Every day is a gift. So.
Well, you started your meaningful beauty. When I think about this, Cindy, you were ahead of the curve on the real beauty game. What is your morning routine and your bedtime routine with beauty? You know, our listeners are going to want to know.
Of course, I use Meaningful Beauty because it was created, for me. So I'm lucky. In the morning, and for my face, I cleanse and then I do a serum. I do our Youth Activating Melon Serum. And then I do a day cream with SPF every day, even if I think I'm not going to be in the sun, because you're always in a little bit of sun. If I'm really feeling splurgy, I put eye cream on, but sometimes it's just like, you don't have the time. And then at night, cleanse, pretty much the same. And then maybe once a week, I'll do a peel or get a facial. I really am obsessed with dry brushing. If you haven't tried.
Yeah. I just talked to Gwyneth Paltrow about this.
Yes. I've been doing it.
So great for the lymphatic blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
I don't even know what what is.
Yeah. I don't know what it does.
Yeah. But it just feels so good. Every morning when I get up, I do dry brushing and then I put like an oil on and then I let it soak in for a little bit. And I go in my jacuzzi and I'm like so happy. I'm like, I feel alive. And you have to get like a good hard dry brush and you have to work yourself way up to that. But now when I don't do it, I miss it.
And is there a key? Because you got to tell, do you do it down or up towards your heart?
I do it up. I do it toward my heart. That's what I was told to do. But yeah.
Oh, I'm going to double back on mine. Okay, wait. So do that and then do oil. And then I got to find a jacuzzi.
Well, yeah. If you're or a bath or a shower, but I am hydrating my skin. I think first you're like stimulating and getting your circulation going. And then I put like a little light oil on and then leave it on for a few minutes and then shower, but I don't like soap it off. So it's just leaves like a little sheen, which I like.
Speaking, you said, or bathtub, it made my mind jump, Cindy, and the 90s music video Freedom, which you talked about, the supermodel doc. I was so upset watching it back, knowing you didn't want to be in the bathtub. Don't make her be in the bathtub when everybody else got to be in all these awesome spots with their turtlenecks and stuff.
I know. I was like, wait, why did I and first of all, the bathtub didn't even have water in it. And it was like, and I had like a bunch of grease on me. But then when I saw it back, I was like, okay, it was okay.
Okay, that was cool.
Yeah.
When you hear that song, if you're driving in your car and Freedom comes on, do you just crank it up, windows down, and think, nobody knows this song better than me?
I think everyone feels that way. Somehow that song comes a lot on, if you're at a party, like the DJ will play it or whatever. And it's, first of all, everyone looks at me. And then but everyone loves that song. It was such an anthem, really, I think, for just being yourself, that freedom of self-expression. He was really ahead of his time with that song.
God, I love him in his jeans and all of that.
Yeah.
Fabulous Women, speaking of that, the Vogue legendary 40 Women cover. Oh my gosh, Cindy, was that a powerhouse moment? Whose digits did you get? Anybody who wanted to meet you hadn't met? Like, take me on the inside.
Edward Enningfield, the editor who just recently left British Vogue, I think it was really everyone's respect and love for him because he's been such a force in fashion. They just had like a bunch of hair and makeup people there. Kai and I got to go together, which was fun. She said, take your mother to work day. I said, take your daughter to work day. And of course, like I knew a lot of the fashion people, but then I had never met Anna Taylor-Joy, who I stood next to. And I had never met Laverne Cox. Like, and everyone, it's kind of like, it was like the best girls' day. Like everyone was just so happy to meet each other. Like from Jane Fonda, who like sat with us and had lunch, and Oprah. So it was just cute. It was great.
Did you and Oprah double back about the doc? I talked about it on my show, how so much was made of nothing and what a silly thing that got pulled out. Did you guys have a moment to talk about that before or after?
I mean, we had a moment just to be like, exactly what you said, but it was like, it was other people talking about not what the intention was. But I mean, Oprah is a big name. So, people like to talk about that.
I feel like y'all have always been super close and so supportive of one another and all of that. And I'm like, why? I mean, I get the moment she was going for for that to get pulled out of the dock angered me.
Yeah, because what I was talking about was really the way that my agent was treating me also. But when I look at that, I shouldn't have like just sat there it was just a different time. And I think that was what we were trying to illustrate in the documentary. It was just how much we've all evolved, and we should evolve. And I don't think Oprah or I are afraid to talk about how we've evolved.
You're totally right. The moment was a different time, and we can look at what could have been done differently.
Yes, exactly.
One random question before we wrap up. I have two quick things. The story, Cindy, about when your husband's best friends with George Clooney. George came into a shit ton of money, and he gave Toomey suitcases full of $1 million to all of his best friends and said, hey, if one of you doesn't take it, none of you get it. When Randy came home with a duffel bag full of $20 bills, adding up to $1 million, what did y'all do? What did you say? Did you make it rain in the living room?
Well, the best story I heard from that is some of the guys came home and told their wives, guess what? George gave us $50,000.
That's genius.
That was the best. And the wives were like, yeah. And it's true. Like, George had this whole thing planned, and it was just like incredible night. And my husband was like, George, I don't want it. And he did say, if one of you says no, then you all say no. And, for some of the guys, it really was life-changing for them. So Randy took it, and yes, then he came home with a Toomey bag, but then you have to get security to take you to the bank the next day. And also you feel a little weird walking into a bank with a bag of money.
That's the greatest story.
But we actually put it into a charity account for our kids. And every year they take the interest from that money, and they together decide on a charity that they're going to donate it to.
Cindy, last question for you. What makes you happy?
Wow. Back to the happy thing.
Good point.
I think what makes me grateful, I would say, is my health, my family, friendship, community, connection, purpose.
Thank you, my friend, for coming to the Coop, spending this hour.
You're so welcome.
Cindy, the whole reason of doing this is everything we talked about. It's sort of grief, parenthood, what's next, all these feelings. You've accomplished so much, but we're also just normal people trying to navigate relationships and all that. So thank you for this.
No, it's like we get to still grow too.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, my love. Bye, sweets.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Holy cow. What an interview. Okay. I got to bring in my better half, Harper McDonald. Get in here, my producer.
I'm here.
Wow.
Okay, so Cindy Crawford is just like us.
She's
Stars,
normal.
They're just like us. The part that I kept thinking about when she was talking was the kids in their 20s asking for advice, and she stops and says, do you really want my advice? Because
I mean,
what?
We fail every day. You and I looked at each other like making a note. I mean, I give advice when they don't even ask a question.
No. They're just literally telling a story. And it's like prime opportunity to be like, let me tell you a little something about when I was your age.
So I really want to work on that. I love what she says with her kids
pauses.
older. She pauses.
Yeah.
And lets them talk and gives advice when asked. Yeah.
Right. And then as soon as she says, she knows that they know that it's not going to be good.
Yeah. I said, Cindy, I'm like, I'm a work in progress, my friend.
Yeah.
What about what she said? I loved this about the emotional bruises. When she was talking about being a real mom, and she was like, look, I'm doing the dishes, I'm cleaning up, I'm doing it. And Randy's outside playing with the kids. And then they all start sort of ganging up on mom, making fun of me. Yeah. And she was like, it hurts my feelings. It leaves bruises. I thought that was so poignant.
Well, and it was, they're married 30 years, right? And so to still have these things under the layers that maybe Randy hasn't quite found yet.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, they're there. They're there. This is what I feel like this is what happens to me in my house is I might have one of those things and I'm kind of bearing it and not talking about it. And there's a thing that's there, it's there, it's there. And then all of a sudden something comes up and I'm like level 10.
Totally.
And my husband's like, what? Where was this?
Dude, you weren't there from 1 to 9, and now you've hit me at a 10.
Now you hit me at a 10.
But to have her say that, right? I mean, a
supermodel.
supermodel.
I never envisioned it that way, and it totally makes sense.
I also love how great she was. Hang on, Harper's phone's ringing. I also love that when she talked about her girlfriends. She has real girlfriends. This is like a great Midwest, smart as heck woman.
Mhm.
And I love when she had her Chicago girls out
Oh,
and
in
they
Cabo.
were in Cabo
Yeah.
and they're sunburned and drinking their beer. And then
Mhm.
she has her like sort of bougie-ish,
Yeah.
great LA friends drinking rosé
Rosé
with
all day.
sunscreen. But she's like, I fit in with both.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of women feel like that.
I know. It's, again, stars. They're
Stars.
just like us.
They're just like us, barely. God, was she awesome. I love her talking about purpose, that Cindy Crawford is sort of like, what is my next thing?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
I just think that's where we are right now.
And also that it's okay to just be okay where you are and having fun.
Yeah.
Like, we all don't have to like barrel into the next,
Yeah.
this is what I'm going to be in the back nine. You can stop and have fun.
And take a bath
For
with
a
your
minute.
dry brushing.
That's right.
Oh,
While singing Freedom.
God, that was a great story. All right, guys. Hope you liked this episode of The Coop, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us, my chickens. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating, drop in a great review, and tag us at The Coop with Kit Hoover. As well, you can follow us on social media at The Coop with Kit Hoover for behind-the-scenes content and updates. We will see you next time in The Coop. And remember, as my mom Bug always says, life is not a dress rehearsal. Make it count. Today's episode was produced by me, Kit Hoover, and Harper McDonald. Our technical producer is Christian Brown. And today's episode was edited by Christian Brown. Business development by Casey Ladd. And a special thank you to all of our sponsors.